Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second event in our series, Zero Waste, Building a Better Community. My name is Carrie Thompson. I serve on the board of directors of Eco Action Arlington, among other things, and I chair its advocacy committee. I'd like to acknowledge Eco Action Arlington's partners in sponsoring this series. They are, as you should be able to see there on the slide, the Sierra Club Potomac River Chapter, Leaders in Energy, the Alliance for Regional Cooperation, and the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions. So let me say just a few more words about the series. Tonight's event focuses on building a circular economy beyond recycling, reduce, reuse, and repair. Our first event in the series was held on October 11th. And if you weren't able to participate, you can find the recorded session. We're including a link in the chat, and Eco Action Arlington also has it linked on our website. And our third and last event in the series is titled Reimagining Our Waste Management System, and it'll take place on January 17th. We're also going to place a slide in the chat that talks about some of the upcoming events, including that one. So let me recap just very quickly tonight's agenda. It includes meeting our moderator, hearing from our three terrific guest speakers, having a moderated discussion among the speakers, and we'll have a Q&A session taking your questions from the chat before we do a wrap up. So let me go ahead now and introduce Joan McIntyre, tonight's moderator. Joan serves as the chair of Arlington County's Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission, or C2E2, which I also serve on, which advises the county board on opportunities to advance county goals for carbon neutrality, renewable energy, and other environmental challenges. C2E2 also hosts the Solid Waste Committee, and it's an expanded citizens committee at the moment as it's supporting the development of the county's new zero waste solid waste management plan, which will go into effect in July 2024, in fulfillment of the zero waste resolution that the county board passed in 2015. The committee is looking to give much greater prominence in this plan to reducing, reusing, and repairing, the theme of tonight's event, among many other things. So before C2E2, Joan served as board chair for Eco Action Arlington, and has been the driving force then and still as a volunteer behind its advocacy and public education efforts. All of these volunteer engagements, including also serving as an extension master gardener, followed Joan's 30-year federal government career as an intelligence analyst. So Joan, over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. We've got a great program lined up for you. Before getting started, I'll encourage anybody to post comments or questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many comments as possible during the last half hour of the program. So just a few opening comments before we get to our speakers, but I'd kind of like to start with this graphic that we're all pretty much familiar with about how the inverted pyramid and managing waste, which is focused on reduce, reuse, recycle. You hear rot, you hear repair, you hear other type things, but essentially, and this is all very important, that, you know, all of us need to be thinking about what our climate footprint is, our environmental footprint is, and what we consume and what we consume. So there's lots of resources out there to help you live a zero waste lifestyle or a plastic free lifestyle. And even Eco Action Arlington had put together a list of how to live a plastic free lifestyle a couple of years ago as part of our plastic free campaign. But frankly, this model really puts the burden on individuals to deal with waste generated from a linear model that's based on produce, consume, and dispose. Not too much different than the chasing arrows of the recycled that go on plastics that think you can recycle something that may or may not be recyclable. So and thinking of this but really, this is really impossible. I mean, it's very hard for people to really live a life cycle that really gets us to where we need to be in terms of a zero waste economy. So you think we need to be thinking more differently. And this is something that we discussed at our first presentation about thinking of a circular economy that really has to, and start is how we rethink and how we redesign products and services so that, we take out the waste, reduce the waste at the beginning, we design the products so that they're durable, they'll last, they can be reused, and also then that they can be broken down into their component parts and then reused or or composted. But everything, has a point, and it shifts the burden from the individuals. And it really is these top three things that we really need to create. And that redesign and rethinking really helps us create that foundation. As our presenters at the last talked about, though, is actually once you shift to this more circular type economy where there's very limited amounts of raw materials, mostly hopefully renewable materials going into the system with very little of it actually going out, is what we should be aiming to get to. So, and from that perspective, as our presenters talked about last time, is this really requires different business models, models that provide the goods and services that make reuse, refill, repair, and other options very easy. As one of the presenters said, is it doesn't have to depend on you bringing your own bag, bringing your own refillable containers and that, but pretty much those are services that are provided as part of the new business models that would be developed. The other thing that they really made a point of at the last meeting is that this is a shift to something that is really much more regional and local in terms of providing businesses and other activities at a very local level to support these things. So it's a great opportunity to expand employment and economic opportunities within regions and localities. Such an economy is now starting to emerge. We'll put up in the chat a list of various businesses in both online and local that are available that can help. In some cases, some of these have been around for a long time, the thrift shops, the repair stops. That's all part of what we're aiming for is that becomes much more strengthened. So tonight we have three speakers who will be talking about their own activities in efforts to kind of promote and develop some of this new business model. And so I'd like to then start with introducing our first speaker, who is Justin Marino. He's the co-founder of Masons and Green, a zero-waste store and sustainable grocers with locations in Alexandria, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. The stores are expanding the local refill and package-free options for everyone from beauty products, bulk foods, housewares, and everything people need to reduce waste in their lives. Justin is also the CEO of the Nexus 3 Group, a company that focuses on solutions for challenges facing the planet. So I'll turn it over to you, Justin.
Hi, everyone. I'm the co-owner of Mason and Greens. My wife, Anna, and I started this store in, I guess we started planning in 2019. We opened a location in Alexandria in 2020, and we just opened our location in Washington, D.C. So the idea behind our stores I'm not sure if anyone has been to the zero waste shop, but what we do is we provide a retail experience where people do not need to buy extra packaging, basically buy their trash. our store, the concept was sort of born out of our need to help people, our community, the planet, and everyone reduce waste. It's one of the big motivating factors for us was when we started our zero waste lifestyle in our house. We were frustrated that a lot of the products that we needed to make this happen were being shipped from halfway across the world, wrapped in bubble wrap, taped up, and then inside some other single-use packaging. And that's sort of the problem here. A lot of people want to do well by the environment. A lot of people want to buy products that are environmentally friendly, but we sort of defeat the purpose of this when we're shipping them long distances and creating a sort of single-use nightmare with these products. So for us, we said there has to be a store here, and sure enough, there was one small operation up in Tacoma Park that was doing this. The Full Fillery, they're great. It's an excellent store. They do some great stuff up there. We decided to open our store in Alexandria, and it was a tough time because it was during the pandemic. We opened our doors on March 27th, 2020. Which, as you know, is a few days before the stay-at-home order and everything like that. So it was a good time. I wouldn't want to go back there. It was challenging, but we certainly were able to do what we needed to do. And the way that we handled that was we sort of focused on online orders and having local pickups and that type of thing. And that was great for people because there were people who still wanted to do something despite being locked up at home. During the pandemic, we all know that packaging, getting everything wrapped in plastic and stuff, just it sort of compounded a lot of issues, and certainly didn't make us any healthier. So the one of the things that we wanted to start looking at when we opened our store was how life was, what the retail experience was prior to plastic's arrival on the consumer market in the sort of 40s and 50s. And there were a lot of things. There were millennia of packaging materials that had culminated before the days of plastic. Some of them were good, some of them were terrible. But we wanted to make sure that we could actually do these things and make a consumer experience where people did not just have copious amounts of trash. For us, we do it through and through in our store as well. So the ideals that we like to afford customers are the same ideals that we have back behind the scenes. For example, the Alexandria store, we generate about a small kitchen size trash can worth of trash every 2 weeks for that store. Everything else is composted, recycled, and or reused and moved along the sort of circularity behind the scenes for us. One of our soap makers had approached us maybe about 6 months ago, and he was asking about buckets. We get a lot of stuff in buckets. We have large quantities of stuff coming in giant buckets. And he said, well, what would be great is if you guys had some buckets, you can send them up this way. I'll fill them up for you, send them back down, and we'll just kind of keep circulating them around that way. And it's really been a great system because A, he doesn't have to buy buckets. And B, we're reusing the materials that we actually have, and we're not trashing those things, which is awesome. So for us, we tend to focus on it from front to back. And that's really one of the most important things. Our whole business is built around circularity and helping people achieve what they need to in their lifestyle to reduce waste.
Thanks, Justin. Very exciting. So our next speaker is Theresa Esterlund. Theresa is the Executive Director of Upcycle Creative Reuse Center. During her 30-year career, she had programming and interpretive teams in Smithsonian National Museums of Asian Art and National Museum of American History, the Textile Museum, and the National Building Museum. Theresa currently teaches a museum studies graduate course on museum learning at the George Washington University's Corcoran School of Arts and Design. Prior to her museum career, Theresa taught middle school and high school students with emotional and behavioral challenges and/or learning differences. She has taught yoga, mindful movement, and meditation. She's an artist in her own right. Her collage artwork has been featured in numerous jury shows, and she designs and produces stationery and paper goods used under her brand Open to Being. Upcycle Creative Reuse Center inspires all people to explore and create by engaging our community in art making experience with reuse materials. So welcome, Theresa.
So Upcycle Creative Reuse Center is an Alexandria-based nonprofit that began in 2012. And let me just, sorry about that. And what we do is we're a creative reuse center, and I'll explain a little bit about what that means. But basically, we connect conservation and creativity, and we do this through a materials center, which I'll explain. It's actually a type of store, and through our programming studio space. So you can see both of those there in these images. We were founded by two Alexandria teachers who were inspired by a visit to Reggio Emilia, Italy. Reggio Emilia is the name of a town in Italy. And it's also a name of a particular kind of educational approach that's focused on early learners, usually preschool children. It began out of World War II with some really strong ideas. And one of them is that children are citizens and people and are capable and confident. And so there's an emphasis on the child as at the center, and that they are also capable of directing their own learning. And so it's child-led. The teacher serves in more of a facilitator and sort of co-learner role with the children, and a partner with them. There's a big emphasis on discovery and curiosity and exploration. There's also a real emphasis on the expressive arts. And there's a consideration that the environment that the children are learning in is considered the third teacher. And so that space and that environment is very important for us. This is a picture of what a Reggio Emilia classroom typically would look like. And you can see that there's natural elements, there's all kinds of materials and things that children can gravitate towards on their own, play with and explore and investigate. And so what we do is we're not just for children, we're for everybody, but that's sort of the heart of what started our focus on creativity. And so a creative reuse center is sometimes called a craft thrift store. So a type of thrift store that focuses on arts and craft kinds of materials. It also sometimes has a programming space, and that's very true for us. So we foster art making and creative expression. So in this one image with the children, they're exploring materials and learning through play and discovery and making On the other image, it's much more of a project kind of focused. We have a really fun program that we do in December that recycles Halloween candy. So it's not a typical kind of recycling type of thing, but we reuse Halloween candy to decorate gingerbread houses around the holidays. So we reuse materials in a number of ways. And the way that we focus on reuse is really, I would say that it has three components. So one is that we accept donations. So we encourage people to donate to us. And there are certain kinds of materials that we accept. And often it's arts and craft type materials like pens, buttons even, but yarn, fabric that you saw in maybe one of the earlier images. But sometimes it's things that you don't think you would reuse and that you might consider trash. So it also gives us an opening for helping people understand and think about reuse differently. We also sell the materials. So we run a store. So everything is donated and then we turn it around at a low price point. And most of the things that we sell, we do it by the bag. So we have some items that are sort of higher priced items that we sell individually, but we also have different sized bags that you can fill up for $10 or $30, depending on how big the bag is. So that is also encouraging people to kind of be creative and think differently and take materials for their own creativity. And then we also do lots of programming. So in our studio space, we have programming for children and adults. And then we also do outreach kinds of programming. A big emphasis for us is on, I would say that education plays a huge role in everything that we do. We're educating people about what reuse can mean, a different way maybe of looking at reuse. We're educating parents about how reuse can be a creative material, and we're educating adults and everyone else too on how to spark their creativity, how to be inspired by something that might not have seemed inspiring. We believe that everyone is capable and creative, coming from the Reggio philosophy and approach. And so this is just a little bit about us again, that we try to look at waste in a different kind of rethinking. The idea that what is being cast off, what is being tossed out, can come back into the community, inspire not just creativity, but also community connection. We're very focused on local economy, local community building. And so that's very important to us as well. And everything that we're trying to do is to spark these kinds of different ways of thinking, not just about waste, but about yourself, about creativity, about how you would express yourself, about different approaches and things that that you can do with materials. And so we have this is where our center is, and that's my information. Thank you.
Thank you, Theresa. Very interesting. Our next speaker is Chiara D'Amore. Chiara holds a PhD in sustainable education and an MS in environmental science and engineering. She is the founder and executive director of the Community Ecology Institute and a sustainability research professor. After working as an environmental consultant for 13 years, her work is now focused on fostering environmental and social well-being through the reconnecting of diverse people with the natural environment, as well as designing, implementing, and evaluating environmental programs. The Repair Café is hosted monthly at Freetown Farms Makerspace in Maryland and focuses on fixing broken items. Freetown Farms is a 6.4-acre organic farm in Columbia, Maryland, and is being restored using regenerative agriculture. The farm provides a vibrant place of common ground where diverse people come together to learn through hands-on experience and how to lead happier, healthier, more connected and sustainable lives. So welcome, Kiara.
Thank you, Joan. I think you just gave my entire presentation. That was a very thorough introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I think Joan's introduction covered a lot of ground. So my name is Chiara D'Amore, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Community Ecology Institute. It's our mission to cultivate communities where people and nature thrive together. We became a 501c3 nonprofit, again, based out of Central Maryland in 2016. And depending on who I'm talking to, I describe our work as being at the intersections of education, environment, equity, and health. Or if I'm talking to a more academic audience, I might talk about connection to nature, civic ecology, community health, and climate action. But those are all basically saying the same thing. It's our mission to get people outdoors and to feel connected with nearby nature, feel connected with the people in their community, and find ways where they can do their part to become active in different facets of environmental conservation. So our programming actually started in 2016. It was an outcome of my doctoral research in sustainability education. And we started with a program called Columbia Families in Nature, which sought to put 3 life experiences out into the community that research has shown kind of creates an ethic of care around the environment. And that's basically time in nature. The earlier, the better. Like, get people outside, get them outside as kids. It's something we don't really do very much anymore culturally. Give them role models for the environment being something that we care about, teach people to pick up trash, plant a vegetable, do something around reduce, reuse, recycle. And the third thing would be give them a chance to make a difference. So whether that's converting a urban plot to a garden, or going out to the Chesapeake Bay and cleaning something, or planting some native plants, if you can get people outside, give them a role model and help them feel like they can make a difference, then they tend to have a lifelong active ethic of care towards the environment. So our first 2 programs were more oriented to family-based programming, because I was launching all that right when my kids were really young. And based on the kind of local community reputation of our first 2 programs, we were given the opportunity in 2018 to buy the last working farm in Columbia, Maryland. Columbia is a really interesting place. I know we're a little bit outside of the Arlington, Northern Virginia bubble here, which is actually where I used to work when I was an environmental consultant and live on the Orange Line for years. But so we're a little bit north, but come up and visit if you want. It was one of the first planned communities in the country. So it's a really interesting place. And again, this is the last working farm. Actually, all the farmland was purposely bought up kind of on the down low 50 years ago to build the city of Columbia from scratch. And Columbia has some really interesting ethics that tend to support its sustainability. But as the last working farm, the previous owner had farmed it organically for 40 years, was getting older, was having some health issues, was seeing development encroach all around the farm, and was looking for somebody who'd buy it and protect it from development. So we got this invitation. I fell in love. Really wanted to find a way to do this, but at the time we were a tiny nonprofit with these 2 little shoestring programs, and really was not viable until we got collaborating with the community, got a lot of people who saw the value in working with us to conserve this piece of property. And it's a whole other presentation, way more than 10 minutes, about this year that we had. Basically 1 year to the week, were from the time I first heard about the farm to the time we closed. And it's now deed restricted from development. So this is what it looks like. It's not very big. You can fly right by it in Harriet Tubman Lane. But there's a lot happening. The entire place is an experiential environmental education center. We're trying to demonstrate things that people can do in their own homes, in their own neighborhoods, at their places of work, etc. At the very center right here, we can see this little white trailer, was this kind of specific place where the previous owner had kept all his equipment, tractors, trucks, snowplows, all that. So it wasn't conducive to growing, really sort of shaded, and actually had a 1-year required lease on it that we couldn't access it for the first year. So 2019, we purchased the farm. We started kind of getting crops growing, practicing regenerative agriculture, growing food. Have a similar story to Justin a little bit, in that we had our soft launch of the farm to the community the second week of March of 2020. So we covered this greenhouse. This is a picture taken like 2 months after we purchased it. And we had this launch. We invited all the county officials to come out. And that was like the next week, everything closed. So it's been this really interesting thing. During the time of COVID, then we continued to work on growing as much food as we could for the community as a farm, but continue to clean up this property and make it accessible as one of the few places that people could turn to during the pandemic to feel connected, combat isolation, and feel like they can make a difference. So one of the groups that turned to us was Transition Howard County, which is a local group. Transition town concept comes out of permaculture design. We're looking at how you can apply permaculture principles, which are usually applied to agriculture and homesteads, to a whole community level. That's a whole other presentation as well. But this group of committed environmental activists have been around since 2012. They weren't not a formal nonprofit, didn't really have a home of their own. But one of the things that they had been doing was at different environmental festivals, they would go out and offer a repair cafe. And a repair cafe is pretty much what it sounds like. It's a chance to have people come together with people who have skills around repairing and fixing items and learn how to, clean and fix their vacuum instead of throwing it away and buying a new one, put a button back on their coat instead of throwing it away and buying a new one, to really take that time to learn those skills about how they can repair and keep, repair and sell or give the items in their lives. So creating a more durable consumer economy. So they were able to do this maybe 2 times a year at different festivals, but it's a lot of work to bring their goods out into the community. So they were really supportive of our purchase of the farm and really wanted to get involved and see if they could make a home for the Repair Cafe at the farm. And so we worked together to do that. If you're interested about repair cafes in general, I just wanted to put up this slide from Repair Cafe International and give you all those resources about how you could find out more about the concept. But basically, the thing they really wanted to do at the farm was to have a place where they could have all their tools, their crafts, that their craftspeople and their fixers could utilize on a regular basis, so that we could have repair cafes available to the community at least monthly. Ideally, we'd like to be able to do this more often than monthly. And so in the makerspace area of the farm, once we were able to open that in the summer of 2020, we created the Repair Cafe. So we have this bigger makerspace that I showed you in the Central Farm. One of our core programs, one of our first programs there, was this idea of helping people to reimagine how they engage with the items that they need to use in their regular life and start to create some capacity around those skills that we have had for generations. Again, Justin talked about how did we used to package things? How do we used to fix things? How did we used to have durability and the things that we rely on for our day-to-day life? So the Repair Cafe became rooted in our makerspace. In the fall of 2021, we really brought it back. There was a lot of cleaning up to do in that makerspace to make it safe and accessible for fixers. And we had 3 repair cafes last year. People started bringing in all sorts of interesting things. And that's one of the fun things about repair cafes, is they're free. We offer some cider, some coffee. We'd like to be able to offer some acoustic music in the future, but we get popcorn makers, jewelry, doors. A lot of people bring in lights, vacuums, clothing. Sometimes we specialize and we say, hey, this is going to be a small electronics repair cafe, bring that. Sometimes we'll say this is more of a textile and fiber arts sort of repair cafe, and we can kind of target the fixers. But people are not only just dropping off their stuff and getting fixed, but they're being taught the skills and how they might be able to fix their items in the future for themselves. So that was last year. This year, we really got into a role and we had repair cafes made through October. And again, this whole time we've been working to clean up the property, clean up the makerspace, and make it what we really needed. We didn't really have any electric in the space at the beginning, didn't have proper lighting or storage. So we've been gaining steam. We had probably about 150 different people come out to repair cafes over the course of this year. And we're really growing our universe of fixers. It's a really nice intergenerational opportunity where we can get people who have some sort of skill. Maybe it's in the fiber arts, or maybe it's around small machine repairs, and they can come and share those skills with the broader community. So it's actually a really lovely community building event. And because of the nature of being at our farm, it is inherently outdoors. With some cover. And these are just a few pictures. This is what the space looks like. We have these 2 Quonset huts. This is technically our repair cafe here. We have been repairing and making Adirondack chairs, fixing. We had a whole big light repair cafe. And it's really pretty joyful. Again, intergenerationality of this type of engagement is one of the things that we think really goes a long way towards our mission of cultivating communities where people and nature thrive together, and that sharing of knowledge and skills. And the makerspace more broadly has this vision and this ethic of helping us to reclaim those arts and skills and knowledge areas that we have had for millennia as people, and make sure that they don't get lost as we kind of become more easy with this disposable society, right? And rethink that and invite people to rethink that. So we do a lot of other things in the makerspace. We have a fiber shed where we're really focused on fiber arts. We do all sorts of arts. Theresa's point arts are an incredible conduit into conservation. And we just really focus on our collaborations in the community so we can have a wider reach and engage people that are reflective of the community that we live in. So this little screenshots from our annual report, just kind of looking at the different organizations that partner with us. We have at the farm, the local domestic violence center having a garden plot, the local chapter of the NAACP having a garden plot, and really working to make sure that people from all backgrounds feel welcome and invited to engage in this type of repair cafe and learn these skills. That's my contact information. Really excited to be learning with you all tonight.
Great, thank you, Kiara. That's fascinating. Now, before we go ahead and get to our moderated discussion, we have a short video from the rounds, which is a zero waste delivery service that works in Arlington, DC, and Alexandria. Okay. We will show that a little bit later, but let's go ahead and maybe start the discussions. So yeah, we all have, kind of a variety of different people that are working things. So I thought maybe to start with, we can the presenters can talk a little bit about what they find most rewarding and most challenging in the aspects of what they're working on.
I think one of the things that I always look back to is I think it was Emerson who said to know that one person has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. And so that's kind of the most rewarding, I think, thing about what I'm sure each of us does. We were working towards a goal here, a goal to make things better for everyone. And that's probably the most rewarding thing. When people come into the store and say, I didn't even know I could do stuff like this, or I didn't even know, a place like this existed. That's good, because that's a person now who is thinking about maybe a different approach and can make those changes in their life.
Yeah, I would just build on that and say that for me personally and for Upcycle as a whole, it's the connections with people, and it's that community building, to use the more generic term, but it's really about getting to know people, people connecting with other people. I love what Kiara said about the intergenerational connections. That's really important to us. And getting to know, we have regular people who are looking for new things all the time, or wanting to be sparked in some way and try something creative. I think those connections, and I hope as we grow, we'll help make more connections between people as well.
I absolutely agree with both of those comments. The joy is definitely being out in community, outdoors, growing together, either, food or growing in knowledge. And that's what really led me to start the nonprofit, is a desire to live a life where I could actually feel the change of the seasons and touch and interact with growing things. I was really motivated into my field because of a love for nature. And then, consulting, it was just commuting into a high rise. It's interesting at this point in time in the stage of the nonprofit's development is I'm, on my computer way more than I want to be, not commuting and I'm not working in a high rise, but there is this kind of interesting tension and dichotomy between like creating the conditions for all this great stuff to happen for people and for the community, but then having it kind of on my personal experience mean that, I'm like running an organization like 40 plus hours a week and trying to find that balance for myself of really making that time to be in that, acorn making class or actually attend the repair cafes. So I think it's so important to have people that create the conditions and then for us to be able to sustain that effort by participating in the work that we offer too. Can be a little bit tough. There's only so many hours in the day. So.
Great. Just maybe talk a little bit about what kind of challenges you face, and particularly with the pandemic, and actually whether the pandemic had an impact, and and maybe made things, offered some new opportunities as well as challenges.
For us, there was this complete synchronicity in terms of timing. Like I mentioned, we really opened when the world closed, and that created definite kind of derailment of best laid plans, and really shifted our focus to, what could we do under those conditions, which for us was primarily focused more on food growing than offering classes because nobody was gathering, right? And our mission is to get people together in the real world, not virtually. But what we found was that we did become this sort of safe place of common ground, and we had 1,000 different people volunteer with us last year. It's been harder to get volunteers this year because the world has opened up again. So we kind of became used to having this incredible volunteer base because we were the place you could go and feel safe and connected. And so I think we're just having to recalibrate and recalibrate and recalibrate, and that takes a lot of time and energy. An example would be our high school internship program. When the schools were shut down, we had a lot of incredible high school students that really did not have anything to do but to come be with us and learn by doing. And then as things started to open up and then extracurriculars came, we've had to reinvent that program 3 times now. So it's okay, but it's never been business as usual, really. And that's, I think, part of why we're all here, because business as usual in a broader sense doesn't work. So
yeah, for us, we certainly had a similar experience where we did all this planning. We started planning in 2019, and everything was just going swimmingly. Everything was great. We were doing well. Everything was right on track. Our everything was just where it was supposed to be. And then in December of 2019, things started changing. And then in January, they started changing even more. And until we opened, and we couldn't not open. For us, the project was that important. The mission was that important. Everything that we had set in place for this was that important. So we just made some changes with how we were doing things. We, by launching our website a little bit earlier and sort of modifying the model for the first few months, we were open. That was key. One of the challenges, I think some of the larger challenges that we had were supply chain issues, and that happens. And I don't think we've even seen the end of those yet. I think we're still seeing the impacts of that, with some of the suppliers that we work with, and and the materials that they need to produce their products and such. But one of the sort of bright sides during the pandemic was we got to work with a lot of small farms who were typically people who sold stuff at farmers markets because all the farmers markets stopped. So we were sort of an outlet for several of them, and it was great. We would go out to the farms to pick up all of the produce and bring it back to the store, and it was a good time. And talking farmers is one of the most fascinating things, I think, on the planet. And if anyone has the opportunity to do it, they should.
So for us, our experience was a little different than for you guys because we were existing before, and we weren't trying to open during a pandemic. So in that regard, we're more similar to a lot of other businesses and organizations that had to move through shutting down and reducing staff. And I would say that we've actually come out of the pandemic in a really positive way. And part of that is, I think, maybe because we don't rely on supply chain, because our supply chain is people getting rid of their stuff. And during the pandemic, people did a lot of getting rid of their stuff and cleaning through their stuff. So that's kind of an advantage. But overall, one of our biggest challenges, and this is true sort of through the pandemic for us, it gave us a chance to kind of really dig into this, has been space, like a place to be, having the right amount of space for our center, having the right, it's not so much the location as the actual physical space for us. And so we were able to make a change and move into this new location early this year, in March of this year. So that has, as another sort of benefit for us, that's given us a bigger area where we can put both our store and our programming together in the same space, which we haven't really been able to do until now. We've had to be more creative about the way we do those kinds of things. So that's been a real benefit. It's also, I think a lot of businesses, nonprofits and businesses, and individuals and humans found that the pandemic and that shutting down experience gave us an opportunity to kind of go inward a little bit more, recalibrate, rethink, reconsider what matters. And so we're actually doing that as an organization. So we're coming through this time now in this new space where we can really kind of pause while we're still going and rethink and reconsider who we are and how we're going to move forward.
Great, thank you. So again, kind of looking for, what are you seeing as the next steps for your organization or business? And how do you see the model fitting into a broader zero waste circular economy? What are the potential for scaling up?
I spent my morning going to the former offices of a law firm in town and taking all of the furniture that they didn't want to move to their new space. And so we rented a U-Haul. And so the purpose of that furniture is we are turning the barn at Freetown Farm into our community engagement center. Everything we've done over the past 3 years has really been with no indoor amenities. We had those covered like Quonset huts and greenhouses, but it's been porta potties and pop-up tents, which has really been constraining in terms of thinking about a post-COVID world where we want to do more and more programming and being able to gather people through all seasons, being able to have our staff come back together again and get off these Zoom functions and really be able to like collaborate in real time and space. So we've been working for a while now to be able to transform the 4,000 square foot barn-like structure that was on the property when we inherited it to a space that we could occupy to be able to grow our programming. So we should be finished with that by the end of this month. It's been a really long journey. We actually just hit our fundraising goal for that capital campaign today with Giving Tuesday. So that's really great. And so that's just one example of this circular economy, is that one of the companies that we collaborate with said, can you in any way use all this furniture that otherwise is going to the landfill? And so we just have almost entirely furnished our new functional space with reused material down to like carpet squares that they weren't intending to give us. I was like, are these carpet squares available? And they're like, you are funny. So we went trucking out with all these carpet squares that we're going to reuse. But people love to get rid of things, to Theresa's point, and we are such a recipient of things and keeping them out of the waste stream. It's actually one of the things we put in our annual report. We use cardboard like it's our job for our farming operations. People bring us cardboard all the time. We used gravel. We use so many materials in the makerspace for our programming, wood chips and logs. So it's really interesting to see what can come in this circular way where we are receiving things, reusing them, repurposing them, and then creating new opportunities for folks. And in the way we do that, trying to really be educational about it. So being very overt and transparent about the fact that we are furnishing the space with upcycled materials. If we are using your cardboard to help grow food, and trying to help people think through how they can repurpose and reuse materials, or other ways in which organizations can help share their streams, to Justin's point about the buckets. There's just a lot of that happening. And I think it's a real opportunity for more cost-effective like growth. There's a lot of, it's a different thing, but it's a real nice reciprocity around services too. You know, our in-kind page on our annual report is also quite long. It's like so many people that have given generously of their time and talents to us, and that we've given of our capacities to them as well. And so I think it's not just about the physical waste, it's about how can we be more regenerative and reciprocal with other resources, all the resources that we have within our community. So that's part of how we plan to grow. So.
We're actually quite similar to with both of our stores. So the Alexandria store and DC store, a lot of the furnishings in there are on their second, third, and fourth life. So we paid a lot of visits to like the Restore, the Habitat for Humanity Restore, Upcycle. Anna had, she picks up stuff from you guys all the time for window displays and stuff like this, and decorations around the store. So this is almost circular within this webinar, which is kind of fun. Yeah, there is a lot that can be done from the business side of things. I don't know. I'm sure most people don't have any idea how much like store furnishings cost, but they are expensive. And there's no need. When there is plenty of great furniture out there, you just have to figure out how to work with it and how to make it work. That's the important part. And we can all do that. We can do that around our house. You know, if there's something that you need in your house, like a small end table, and you can only find one that doesn't necessarily suit your taste, well, you can always paint it. You could always go to Upcycle, grab some materials, you know, do it up and have fun with it and make it look great. These are the things that we should all be focusing on. And it's really, really important to do that, because there is such good stuff out there that, you know, otherwise, as Kiara said, we'll end up in the landfill, and it shouldn't.
Yes, all those things. I guess the only thing I would add is that in terms of our growth and sort of what's next is kind of a little bit going back to our roots and seeing how we can expand the educational side of teaching people how they can be creative, and that's something that's super important to us as a belief that everyone is creative, and that expressing yourself through, I'll say, the arts in the broadest sense, because you don't need to be an artist to be creative and to express yourself. And so that's, I think, an area that we would really like to strengthen. It is one of our strengths, and we want to grow and strengthen that even more. And I think, you know, that going back to our roots is the idea that, you know, thinking back to our Reggio Emilia focus is that for parents, there are things around the house. There are things that might be headed towards the trash can that can be made into beautiful things. It's not, sometimes they're just for playing and exploring, and sometimes you can create and make something that's beautiful and functional too. So those are the areas that I think we are going to grow in.
Thank you. You know what, it really strikes me on this is that there's so much in this kind of evolving ecosystem almost of, you know, kind of the circular economy that is so much more than just making sure people get goods and that we're managing the reuse and disposal, but it's a lot more about connections, about community. In this case, we have two organizations that are nonprofit, but you know, all people that are gravitating towards these new models are being driven by something more than profit motive. And where do you see that going in a broader perspective and in terms of as we move towards more of a circular economy? And what do you think might be some steps that actually can help, you know, facilitate, accelerate that movement?
On my last slide, I had that screenshot of the collaborations page. I think it's interesting in the nonprofit sector and definitely in the for-profit sector, there's this, you know, this idea of like my slice of pie, and I have to defend my slice of pie. And there's this competition over this idea of scarce resources. I was a little bit surprised going into the environmental space thinking, oh, great, you know, everybody in the environmental space here is all in the same team and we're all going to work together. And to some extent that's been true, but there's definitely still the sense of like, okay, well, if there's a grant available, we're all going for the same grant. Not everybody's going to get the grants. There is this kind of competitive energy that I think is so inherent in our way our systems currently work and have a lot of root cause in some of the systems that are creating our environmental problems. I try really hard to stay anchored in this idea of the fact that we'll go farther together and that collaboration is the best path forward for us in the environmental space more broadly, for profit and not for profit. And really in any space. So the more we can reach out and think through like, where is that shared overlap and mission and how can we then work towards that piece of common ground together? You know, for example, the Howard County branch of the NAACP has one of our largest garden plots at the farm. You know, their mission as an organization is to support the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. They're really trying to uplift people who have been marginalized and oppressed, but we do have common ground and looking to really create healthy communities for all people. And so we share this space together and it's so mutually beneficial. And so taking that time to understand who's in your community and reach out and see where you can work towards your shared goals, I think helps to break down a lot of barriers and helps to make a lot possible. I know economically, funders really like to see that, just from a really blatant perspective. I was at the Howard County budget hearings asking for money for my organization, and in my testimony spoke about all the other organizations with whom we're doing work, and then many of those other organizations spoke about our collaboration. So it was like really this moving moment where, without any premeditation sounds harsh, without any planning, we all referenced each other and how much we're working together, and we all got funded in that grant cycle, right, in the budget cycle, because it was very clear that we weren't out doing our own thing, that we were talking, that we were in conversation, we were trying to uplift the community together. I think that's one of the best paths we have towards shifting the current model.
I completely second that third, that fourth, that I mean 100%. I've only been with Upcycle for a little over 2 months, but I've spent 25 or more years in nonprofits, and nonprofits often do think in a collaborative way. It's very much my way of doing things too. And part of that is because we don't have the resources. We don't have the staff. We don't have this person doing this job, or we don't have these materials, or we don't have the money. And so we often do have to look to other people to help us out. And I think to Kiara's point that it's always better. It's always richer. It's always more interesting. It's always mutually beneficial when those kind of collaborations happen. And I've just seen it over and over and over again, and how important it is. And honestly, I believe that it's true in business too. I think it's very much an American mindset, the sort of what's in it for me, and that kind of, individual approach rather than the collective approach. But it's I think there's also what we learn from each other, and Carrie, we're speaking about that too. So what we learn from each other as organizations, as businesses, and as humans, which goes back to what Justin was saying with his Emerson quote about how we're all kind of in these things to make the world better. And so it kind of comes back to, how do we do that? How to keep that going?
Right. And from a for-profit perspective, it's a little bit different, right? Because we want to be able to provide products that people need. There's a place for just about everything. We want to make sure that we're supporting the small businesses, the local businesses, the actual economy in the region. This is super important for us. And again, while we're doing that, we're sort of lifting up and pushing forward the mission that we have of reducing people's waste and giving people an alternative place to shop where they don't need to buy trash.
And one maybe final question before we kind of show the video and then go to some of the questions that we're getting in from the audience. But do you see any changes that you'd like to see at either the local, state, or federal levels that would, really facilitate and create a more favorable environment for zero waste initiatives such as you're running?
Oh, there are so many. Where to start? There is so much that local government can actually do. Local, even state and federal government, everyone needs to be working on this. This is something that affects all of us. The fact that people take their trash out to the edge of their, they throw it down the trash chute or take it out to the edge of their property line, and then it just is it magically disappears. No one knows what happens to it. No one knows about the people who pick it up. And this is upsetting. This is not how it should be. We should not be burdening everyone else and just not thinking about it. So this is one of those things where I don't, we need to focus on the EPR stuff, the responsibility of the manufacturers, who make stuff, giving tax incentives to businesses and organizations who are actually doing the right things and adopting models to reduce waste. This is important. These are probably some steps that are on the horizon that can probably be achieved before some of the lofty goals that a lot of people speak about.
Theresa, Kiara?
I'm a huge fan of Howard County these days, so I can kind of speak to some of the things I see happening very locally here. With our current administration, they started an innovation grant series where people could ask for resources to support innovations in a variety of sectors. But that's, in full transparency, what's allowed us to do most of our work in our makerspace area around our Repair Café. The innovation grants have been great for us around that, because we've been able to talk about kind of land-based climate action, waste reduction programming, those sorts of things. There's also a plastic bag fee here, which I know can be controversial, but that plastic bag fee has funded another pot of grants that nonprofits can access around waste reduction programming and education. So thinking about ways to, it's one very small example of like kind of shining a light on, like, you take this plastic bag home with all your stuff, but there's a cost to that, multiple layers of cost to that. I don't know that's necessarily deterring people from using the plastic bags, but they are putting the money they're collecting right back into the community for educational purposes around waste reduction. There's a composting program here, curbside, which I think is still fairly uncommon, but it helps to get people thinking about not throwing their organic matter into landfill, which is a huge issue from a climate perspective. The methane generation is not good. So I really appreciate being part of, and I like seeing very like localized actions that are helping to daylight some of the issues and try to get at solutions or support people and come up with innovations.
I would build on that by saying that so I've lived in Arlington County since the early 90s. And I think that one of the really exciting aspects of living in this area, and also one of the most challenging aspects of living in this area, is that we are so many counties around the larger DC area, and there's often not very much crossover in terms of resources, and there's reasons for that I understand, but so nonprofits don't have access to some grants if they're, they do have access to the grants for their community, for their county, but not necessarily to the other ones. And here we are, literally, I crossed the street from my house and I'm moving from Arlington to Alexandria. It's not that we're all so connected, and people live and work in multiple areas in this geographic area that I really feel like there are more ways that we can look at how we might share and expand our resources with these efforts, and sort of putting the money behind it locally is really important. But local means a lot of different things in the DC area. So I just throw that out to consider.
Thank you. I mean, I think, with our organizations, we're working with multiple organizations, and, all of Northern Virginia pretty much now has the plastic bag tax. So that, kind of moving in similar directions. And I think there's growing interest in moving across a number of environmental issues. But I think, you make a key point, is that, what happens at the local level is extremely important, and people talking with their delegates, with their county board members, local officials and staff, and is a good way of really kind of promoting what's important for you and what's important for the community. But let me try and see if I can play that.
You could worry less about your weekly shopping list full of all the boring stuff. What if those essentials just appeared without the boxes or the plastic? At the Rounds, we are challenging the way that we currently think about household essentials. The Rounds is here to lighten your load and lessen your carbon footprint. We'll make sure your pantry is always stocked with your local favorites and everyday staples.
Hi everyone, and thanks to EcoAction for including the Rounds here. My name's Evan. I'm the head of service design and sustainability. We've been working really hard on making sustainability effortless, and have focused on 3 areas that I want to discuss. First, and top of mind, is our packaging. We've upgraded our refill bags in all markets to a 100% post-consumer recycled bag that's more durable and easier to clean than our previous cotton bag. We also sell most products in reusable containers, and we work with our local vendors to eliminate packaging. For example, in DC, we sell Compass coffee and Green Island bakery goods in our own reusable containers. We also equip those containers with QR codes that allow us to remind members to return their packaging, as well as for us to learn about those containers' journeys, so we can make sure that they take another trip back to your homes and stay out of the landfill. We're also developing even newer packaging that would be lighter, more durable, easier to stack in your home, and also Nest to save space while in our warehouses and in shipping. Second is efficient electric-powered two-way logistics. By delivering to our members once a week and picking up empty packaging on that same trip, the Rounds maintains super efficient deliveries that don't pollute our cities or create unnecessary traffic. Lastly, our product assortment. We know that by having an inclusive assortment, that's the most impactful way on the planet. We offer a range and we'll be building gamification in to nudge our members to make even more sustainable choices than they do now. The Round service is live to residents in DC and the Arlington-Alexandria area. Participants here can take advantage of a 1 month free membership plus $10 credit when you sign up using the coupon code ECOACTION, one word. If anyone has any questions, they can contact us at support@therounds.co and we'll follow up afterwards. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Great. So emerging options on getting to a zero waste. So Catherine and Jackie, you want to kind of pose some of the questions, and if you do have, if for the audience, if you have some additional questions, please kind of put them in the chat box.
All right, well, the first one would go to Theresa. Someone wanted to know what types of donations you accept. Specifically, they asked about clothing, but is there a place someone could go to find the types of donations you accept?
Yeah, my battery is starting to die, so I just needed to move to a plug. Yes, we our website, upcyclecrc.org, but in the chat is tells what we accept and what we don't accept. It shifts and changes at different times based on what we have in the store, what we need more of, what's selling well, what we want to kind of encourage or discourage at any particular time. So we don't take, for example, clothing or furniture. What we take is mostly smaller items. A lot of the things that we take are you might not think of, like containers. We take lots of containers, lids, bottle caps, things like that you might not consider. And then more obvious things like the pens and markers and paints and paper and materials that can be used for making art, but also can have other purposes. We take business supplies, different things like that. So again, check our website.
Thank you. I have a few for Justin. He's answered some in the chat, but maybe he could talk a little bit more about it. Some of the sourcing of your stuff and how it differs from what you would find in the supermarket, and how you deal with pricing, since we've had dependence on cheap goods from elsewhere. How do you manage earning a living wage and being able to sell things for people other than Elon Musk?
Yeah, that is absolutely a challenge. As some of the questions had come in, they were talking about sourcing from local businesses and manufacturers, and we do an extensive amount of that. This is why we were, in fact, during the pandemic, we were able to still get products in because they were all coming locally, and some of them didn't have dependency upon larger supply chain issues. Now, that's not to say that that there weren't inherent challenges for them as well, but keeping the cost down is it's the most difficult part of it, right? Because we want to support the small business. The small businesses can't afford to buy a 55-gallon drum of olive oil. They can't do that. It's just that it's not in their budget, it's not in their model, they don't have the space for it, whatever the reason may be. The price point, per ounce of a 55-gallon drum of olive oil is a lot different than it is going to be for something that some other a different format size, like a 5-gallon bucket or something like that. So as the manufacturers, we sort of work with them because we know a lot of people within the industry. We have a lot of suppliers who we work with on many different levels, and we've hooked a bunch of them up together. We have there was one of our bakers was having trouble finding reasonable priced chocolate that was that adhered to sort of fair trade principles, which I won't go into those right now, but that's another issue for another time. But they were looking for a certain price point, and we had sort of introduced the baker up with the chocolate maker who is local, who actually brings all of her chocolate here via wind power. She brings she has one of the, I think the 4 wind powered cargo ships in the world bringing her cocoa beans here to the United States, and she's based out of Chantilly. The putting them together, she also pays 3 times fair trade, if that tells you anything about the challenges that there are with what conventional grocery store calls fair trade, or the purchases that they make. So yeah, sometimes things will be a little bit more expensive. That baker wanted to do things right. Was she able to absorb the cost elsewhere? I think she was, and that's kind of what you have to do. It's all a balancing act. One of the things that we like to say in our store that sort of sets us apart from conventional grocery stores or anything else is, for us, you buy what you need, not what you don't. If you only need a cup of flour, there's no reason why you should have to buy a 5-pound bag of flour. This is important because that 5-pound bag of flour minus 1 cup is going to probably go to waste and end up in a landfill. As Kiara was saying, this is, food waste in landfills is bad news. So for us, being able to be a shop where people can buy just what they need and not what they don't is important. And that can actually save people money. If you only need, 8 ounces of hand soap instead of 16 or 22 or something like that, then you can actually do that at our store. In fact, you could buy 4 if you want, or 1, depending on how much you need. So again, it's all about buying what you need and not what you don't, and sort of helping people realize that culturally in the United States, we buy lots of stuff, and probably more than we need. In most cases, and it's sort of changing that mindset. It's a hard thing to do, but once people start understanding it and start doing it, it does actually make a difference.
Yeah, sometimes it's just getting people into the habit of doing things differently, and that takes mental energy.
And just a quick follow-up question for Justin. Do you have expansion plans generally, and to Arlington specifically?
So we just opened DC in September. That was a long time coming. But it's funny, right after we open a store, we're Anna and I are in the position where we say, never again, we won't do it. It's too much. But then about a year later, we start thinking about it again, and the itch starts growing. And we do plan on expanding. There will be more stores, and we're looking to actually move to some underserved markets that are a little bit outside of the area as well. So, but that'll it'll come with time. So.
Kiara, do you have any advice with people on how to get a repair cafe started, some kind of lessons learned? And also thoughts of how to actually train people, because so many people have lost the skills of just being able to fix things.
Yeah, I think that that loss of skills is really important. Maybe it's too extreme. It kind of feels like we're on a precipice. I think a lot of folks that kind of maybe grew up more so with that knowledge or have acquired skills in the fixing arts or crafts and trades are getting older in years, and it's really important to have a way to pass that knowledge down that's really broadly accessible. So there is something of like I said earlier, kind of creating the conditions by creating a space where people are welcome. They don't have to be professional, they don't have to be certified, but say, you know, I know how to make reusable utensils out of wood, right? And they're going to teach that whittling class, and it's a source of joy for them, and we give them a platform and a conduit to be able to reach new people. There's something that as draws people, I think, to the question that went into the chat. It's like, how do you even get on people's radar that we exist, that this is an opportunity both to learn and to share knowledge? I think one of the things that's challenging in this day and age is that, especially if you're trying to reach an intergenerational audience, is that the wide range of communication platforms. Some people will never get on Facebook, some people will never get on Instagram, people will only be on Instagram, some people only want a newsletter, some people probably still want bulletins up in the coffee shop. Like, there is no one way to get the word out. So we try to cover a lot of different ground without spreading ourselves too thin in terms of reaching different audiences. I do think that's where having a nice relationship where we can say, hey, you know, this organization, could you put this little clip in your newsletter and spread the word to a broader audience is helpful, and being able to do that reciprocally. I also do think that during COVID, people were bored, like the what is it, the sourdough bread craze, right? Like, everybody and their mother wanted to make sourdough bread and like start cooking things from scratch and stuff. I think there was maybe a broader swath of society that was interested in a lot of the things that we're talking about, because we were forced to slow down. People were like, I would like to know how to make bread. I would like to know how to make this table that I've been wanting to have in this corner because I want to grow some plants. And so this idea of being able to create things and craft things and fix things became a sense of like agency. Like, when everything else was chaos and out of our control, actually being able to make your own bread or build something or fix something became something satisfying and soothing, and there's a little bit of breathing room to do it. So I think more and more people are interested in maybe even realizing that they do have a skill that they could share. So that there's a lot there. So it's really about creating the space and trying to get the word out. The repair cafes are free inherently. We do put out a jar if people want to make a donation. It's kind of part of the ethos of a repair cafe. We do offer workshops on a sliding scale. So it's like, kind of, here's what the market cost is for this. If you need support, here's an option for getting a reduced cost. If you feel like you have an abundance, you know, please feel free to share extra so that somebody can come at a reduced cost. We try to open the doors as broadly as we can to participation. We don't really do right now any training per se, like to train people how to become fixers. I think the folks that were a part of that network before COVID, for fully understandable reasons, did not want to be out in public doing things in person during the pandemic. And now we're kind of in this different world, perhaps, where it's harder to get people back in that mode. We may find that when we have a little bit better accommodations and conditions, that we could do some workshops where we're like training the trainer and helping to share that knowledge, where people do feel like they have the confidence or capacity to actually be teaching the thing that they just know how to do inherently. Because that's a big gap too. It's like, I know I love to whittle, but how would I actually even teach anybody else how to do that? So a lot of pieces.
Yeah, and that's certainly a good community activity of just need a space that you can have regular, and a group that'll help organize and bring people together. So any final questions?
Nothing more in the chat.
Okay. Well, I think we've running out of time as well. So I would just Let everybody know that our next program will be reimagining our waste management system, which will be Tuesday, January 17th, again at 7 to 8:30. And we're going to have several speakers who will be representing various municipality, including Kings County, Washington, and they have a very aggressive, what they call RePlus program, but basically focusing on that top level of the tier. And if you're interested, there's also a circular economy webinar coming up later on on December 5th, next Monday, that might be of interest for people that want to explore this further. So thank everybody for attending, and now I'll turn it to Carrie for some last comments.
Okay, why don't we slide to the next slide. We have some other upcoming events. Eco Action Arlington has its volunteer social in the new year on January 9th, and it's Martin Luther King 2023 Day of Service on January 17th. Let me just say again, personally, a big thanks to all the folks from the different organizations that pulled this event together. And I want to say to each of the speakers that personally, I felt very inspired by what you have done. You've created something beautiful and meaningful in accordance with your principles. So thanks very much for everything that you do. We learned a lot tonight. Thanks for attending, everyone.
And just mention a couple of other events that there's the Virginia Conservation Network. They'll do their 2023 General Assembly preview coming up this Saturday from 9 to 12. So there's several locations, including in Herndon. So good way to know what's going on at the General Assembly and how you might kind of influence. FACS has also got their 20s and 30s social circle, just an opportunity for young people to get together. First one's coming up December 14th at 6 p.m. at the Caboose Commons. And we'll have information. And then they have a book discussion on braiding sweetgrass coming up on January 25th at 6. So again, thank everybody again for attending and have a good evening.